This build is a bit of a blast from the past, if you know what I mean. And that's why I've called this next build the Time Traveler, because the core engineer has not really seen play in quite a while, and it's a playstyle that I think is pretty interesting during the pre-HOT era that allowed engineers to be like this high damage kind of like ranged option, and then Scrapper and Holo kind of changed that into like a melee option. So this is a really fun build, and yeah, so what I have is pistol, shield with exposure and doom, just because this is a Condi build. You want as many cover Condis as possible. I have Sinister amulet and Divinity rune. So there's this whole thing going around now with like really aggressive amulets, and then you use like a rune that gives you increased max health. So I have the trait Blast Shield, which gives you increased vitality based on how much power you have, and that works really well with Sinister, right? Because most engineer builds run that were core Condi were pretty much like Rabid builds, and this build allows you to have more power than Rabid does, so you can have a lot more burst damage, but also you get a lot of survivability from the build, because I have Inventions, which gives you a lot of protection, and that'll make up for not having Rabid because you have the power reduction. And then I also still have the vitality because I'm running Blast Shield and Divinity rune. So that's pretty much those choices there. Sinister allows you to do quite a bit of damage, so it's kind of nice. But in the traits, I go very defensively. So in Alchemy, I take Protection Injection, so I gain protection whenever I am disabled every 30 seconds. This is just kind of nice because it gives you a lot of prot synergy in the build, and you'll see that later. You have a lot of Condition Cleanse here with Elixir C passive. You also get an Elixir B passive, which will give you a ton of boons. And you have Emergency Elixir E, which is very, very strong because it saves you from dying, and on a 60-second cooldown, that's quite often, because you're not going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to die faster than 60 seconds. So usually Elixir E will actually proc, so it gives the enemy quite a time gate to get the kill on you, so it makes you pretty tanky. So this is a very good trait. And then Compounding Chemicals, it's going to give you a little bit more concentration and heals you whenever you give yourself a boon. So that's pretty nice because you gain a lot of boons with this build because of Purity of Purpose. So whenever you cleanse a condition from an ally, you convert it into a boon instead. And that works really well with the Anti-Corrosion Plating trait. Whenever you grant protection to an ally, you cleanse conditions from them. And you gain protection, as you can see, from Protection Injection, Elixir E. You also gain it whenever you use a shield skill, and also whenever you use Elixir H and the Tool Belt skill of Elixir H. So that's really nice because the conversions of Purity of Purpose are often really good. So Bleeding turns into Vigor, and what Vigor does is it allows you to dodge, right? And dodging is just really good damage mitigation. But dodging also is really nice for Explosive Entrance, because this is also, a power build, and Explosives has very good power synergy with the Explosive Entrance. Whenever you hit an enemy, you do a decent amount of damage, and then whenever you dodge, it'll recharge that. So yeah, that's really nice. And also you get stuff like whenever you convert vulnerability into prot, you kind of like get a synergy there, because you cleanse vulnerability and that gives you prot, and then prot cleanses a Condi, so then it gives you a second Condi cleanse. So yeah, it's very, very good, these two traits together. You can get a lot of sustain from that. So yeah, as I was saying, you go into Inventions here, and this gives you a lot more Condi cleanse as well. So whenever you use a heal skill, you'll be Condi cleansing, so your heal skill actually cleanses 2 Condis. This gives you really nice effectiveness increase on the protection as well, so 40% damage reduction instead of 33. I think this trait's a little bit busted. You also gain protection when you use a heal skill, so in reality you gain 3 Condi cleanse from your heal, because this gives protection and then this makes you give protection again, so you gain 3 Condi cleanse, so that's pretty nice. And then I have Mecha Legs, which makes movement inhibiting conditions last less on you by 33%, but it also gives you a 25% passive movement speed increase. I don't really gain swiftness in this build, so this is kind of necessary. Then you have a little bit of healing power here, and we already talked about anti-corrosion plating. So in explosives, we talked about explosive entrance. That's very nice. It's also kind of nice because it's whenever blast shield, it'll proc explosive entrance, it'll give you some barrier, which is nice sustain. And most importantly in this trait line is the Grenadier trait. So what this does is it allows your grenades to have 100% higher velocity and 60% increased radius. So grenades is kind of like the core of this build. So if you'll see here, when I use grenades without the trait, they move kind of slow and it's hard to land. But when I have the trait on, it makes them way faster and it actually gives them a wider radius, right? So it makes them a lot easier to land, and that's kind of important for this build, because if people are just walking around like normal, it's going to make it really hard for you to land your grenades, and the grenades are the pretty much the biggest portion of your damage, so it's really important to have this. Also, explosions cause vulnerability, so basically the only explosions that I have are this passive explosive entrance. You also have grenades, and that's pretty much it. But the thing is, the grenades each count as 1 explosion each grenade, so you'll often give 3 vuln every time you hit with grenades. So you give a lot of vulnerability with this build, and that's really important, not only because it increases your damage, but it's also a cover Condi. So we'll talk about the Condi output a little bit later. And yeah, blast shield is pretty nice. You gain increased damage per vuln stack on the target, so the power damage of this build is actually kind of significant, and that's very nice as well. And shrapnel finally, so whenever you use an or hit someone with an explosion, you have a 33% chance to bleed them for 1 stack for 6 seconds and then cripple them for 1 second. So as I said, grenades you hit 3 times, so you have pretty much every time you land a grenade, right, you're gonna hit 3 times, and that's gonna give cripple, because on average that's going to be 33%, 3 hits, on average that's going to be 100% chance. So every time you hit with grenades, it's going to at least proc shrapnel once. And that's really nice as well, because cripple is another cover Condi. So if you see here, I do bleed, cripple, and vulnerability with pressing shrapnel grenade. And shrapnel grenade is your main source of damage, because as you can see here, it does 1 stack of bleed for 10 seconds every time it hits, and then it also has a base damage of 400, and that's every grenade, so it's doing 3 times that much if you hit. So as you can see there, I did no crits, and it hit for 1,300, which is not that bad. But if I crit, I could get something a little bit higher than that. And then as you can see, the bleed ticks are pretty high, and this is a very low cooldown skill, so I got like 2k there, and I'm getting 400 bleed ticks, and this is a 5-second cooldown, so you get a lot of damage over time from shrapnel grenade. So every time you can, you want to use shrapnel grenade to get some damage on the opponent. And yeah, that's pretty much the traits there. So you want to be getting constantly putting out Condis with your grenades. So you use shrapnel grenade as your big damaging skill, and that'll put 3 condies on them. It'll also put on poison if you have your doom sigil on proccing, and then from there the 3 grenade is not really that strong. It does very low damage, but it blinds if you really need that. The 4 is very good because it gives chill and has decent power damage, and then the 5 is insane damage because each grenade gives 3 poison stacks. So if you hit all of them, it gives 9 poison. I got 10 there from the sigil, but as you can see there, it did like 1,000 poison ticks, and that's an 8-second condi. So over time, that will do a lot of damage. But it's a 25-second cooldown, so mostly you want to be just throwing out your shrapnel grenades, and then when you think you can really land poison grenade, you go in for the kill. Also note, poison grenade is unblockable. So if this is really important because this whole build is very projectile based. So it's very easy for you to be countered by projectiles. However, because poison grenade is unblockable, that means that you can use this through projectile blocks. So you don't want to throw out poison grenade just for damage, because a lot of times you want to save it for a moment when the enemy thinks that they're safe, and then you hit them really hard with poison grenade when they think that they are, because you can go through their blocks. So yeah, that's really important. And yeah, that's pretty much the grenade kit. If you have nothing else to spam, you can press the 1, because that will give you, bleeds over time as well. But you have other skills that you can use. So the pistol has a pretty decent power coefficient on it, and it'll give you a 5 stack of poison, and the poison has a long duration, so that's very nice. The auto attack is kind of okay as well. It's just a 1 stack of bleed with a decent duration. It's not very effective, but if the target is moving around too much, this is very easy to land. Then you have static shock. This is actually really strong. If there's 2 opponents next to each other, it'll bounce between them, and every time it hits, it'll blind and give 3 stack of confusion for 5 seconds. So as you can see here, these 2 targets are right next to each other. It actually bounced over here and there, but if it just went between these 2, it would have given 6 stacks of confusion. And that can be a pretty heavy burst on downstate bodies, because oftentimes they'll just sit there and auto attack. And if someone's rezzing them, it'll bounce between those 2 very often. Next, you'll have your shield abilities. So magnetic shield is pretty nice because it's a projectile block, and you can use the second activation to knock back enemies, which is it's a blast finisher. So you can combo that with you have some smoke fields on your supply crate when you put that down, but mostly, yeah, you're going to be wanting to use it for med pack, or mostly you want to be using that for knocking enemies away and then giving them a combo and sort of like CC comboing them. So yeah, the 5 skill is a block that has duration of 2 seconds, and it will stun any enemies who hit you in melee range, and then you can also activate it again and use it to do a little bit of damage and daze the target, which is really nice because it's a lot of CC on 1 skill. And as we've already noticed, protection, you get this from the inventions trait, so you'll gain Condi Cleanse whenever you use your shield skills. So next I want to be looking at the utilities. So I take Elixir H instead of the healing turret because Elixir H is actually a little bit more easy to use. I'm not even using HGH, but the difference between healing turret and Elixir H is that healing turret is better for your allies, whereas Elixir H is better selfishly, and this is kind of like a 1v1 build, so I prefer to go to side nodes with this build. and it allows me to be a little bit more selfish to take Elixir H. But if you do want to go to team fights more, you can cleanse your allies with this, and that'll give them purity of purpose, which is really good. But as far as we know, Elixir H also gives kind of the same amount of Condi cleanse, because you also have the tool belt skill. Next I have Slick Shoes. So Slick Shoes is pretty nice because it gives you the ability to combo your enemies. So what it does is it leaves like this oil slick on the ground, and if anyone walks into it or you walk over them, it will knock them down for 2 seconds, and there's only one time that they can slip on this. So what you want to do mostly is have your grenades ready, and then Slick Shoes, and then as soon as they get knocked down, you want to throw all your grenades on them, and it's really easy to land grenades on someone who's not moving. So that's really nice. It's also really good against blocks. So this is unblockable. So what you'll do is you'll knock people out of their, say like a ranger uses their greatsword block, and that's a really long block, and it prevents you from killing them. So what you want to do is you want to Slick Shoes over them, and if they move, they'll get knocked down by it. If they stand still, they might not get knocked down. So you have to be careful because there is counterplay to Slick Shoes. But yeah, it's really good. It can also interrupt a lot of evades. So like Dagger Storm on Thief or Sword 3 on Revenant, if you Slick Shoes that, you can often, counter pressure them really hard. So it's just a really dangerous skill for some players to be against, and because this build has some decent burst damage with grenades, it makes the combo potential very high. So that's really nice. Also, the tool belt is a stun break that gives you super speed. So this build has 2 stun breaks. One is Elixir S, and then one is the super speed. Basically, it's just nice to have 2 stun breaks, especially when one of your stun breaks kind of like stuns you in a way, because you can't make any action other than stomping and rezzing. So it's just nice to have a second stun break, and that's why I like Slick Shoes mostly. Next you have Elixir S. This gives you invulnerability for 3 seconds, and obviously that's really strong because it allows you to make plays and to prevent yourself from getting focused. Also, the tool belt skill is a elixir that gives you 3 seconds of stealth, which is nice for making plays, making jukes and stuff like that, and disengaging. So Elixir S is just a staple to pretty much all engineer builds. And then, we have Grenade Kit as well, which the tool belt is just Grenade Barrage, which you should use this because it does proc shrapnel quite a bit. So as you can see here, it hits so many times. I only got 1 shrapnel there, so that was kind of unlucky, but it's 6 grenades, which is double the amount of the normal grenade hit, so it's kind of good. And it does a little bit more damage than a normal grenade too, so it has some nice burst. But generally, yeah, your big damage does come from your 2 and the 5, because they're not mostly Condi, they're both Condi and power. So this is a hybrid build, obviously. Lastly, we have Supply Crate. So Supply Crate is a 3-second AoE stun, and as I said, this is a very good build for doing combos. So that is really nice for maybe like Slick Shoes into grenade, into Supply Crate, into more grenades, and then you can get some really good combos off from that. And yeah, it's just really good for the CC in like a 1v1 situation. And because Supply Crate also puts down a bunch of turrets wherever you do that, it's really nice in 1v1s because it puts a lot of pressure on the node. And if the enemy has to deal with the killing the turrets, then it means they can't deal with you. So that's why Supply Crate is really good. And you want to detonate the Supply Crate when you think that you don't want to have them anymore, so that the cooldown starts running. Supply Crate's tool belt skill, because you're a core engineer, is very strong though. So for Scrapper and Holo, the trade-off is you don't get an F5 skill because you get their class mechanic. But for core engineer, the Supply Crate gives you med pack drop, which gives you a 14 condition cleanse in the spot that you cast it. And with Purity of Purpose, that means you have potential of gaining a ton of boons if you cleanse a ton of Kandis. So yeah, that's really strong. And it also drops little med packs on the ground, which you can heal off of. So as you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can gain, about like 6,000 health because each of them gives like 1,300 healing off of these little med packs. So it gives you a lot of sustain. This build has pretty good sustain. So yeah, you want to be using this on yourself if you ever need it, but it also heals your teammates. So yeah, you can cleanse your team of 14 conditions, which is basically as many conditions as there are in the game. And yeah, that's just a full Kandi cleanse, which is super strong in team fights as well. So yeah, while this is a 1v1 build, it has AoE damage, it has a lot of CC, so it's also useful in team fights. And that's why I like this build, because it's very versatile. You can go into team fights, you can go into 1v1s, and the only issue really is with the build is projectile block and mobility. So as a core engineer, you don't really have rifle, right, because I have pistol shield. Well, you do have a lot of sustain, but you don't have like, hollow mobility with the holo 2 where you can leap every 2 seconds. And it's not like scapper where you have hammer and that gives you a leap ability. So it is rather an immobile build, but because you have so many range attacks, you can manipulate your positioning more freely and allow you to get mobility from just your movement and your being aggressive from range. So I like that. So let's talk about the skill usage a little bit. So normally you want to be using grenade 2 off cooldown, so just make sure whenever you can use grenade 2, and then while that's on cooldown, what you'll do is you'll be using your pistol abilities, and then you'll go back in, do your grenade 2. Maybe at this point, you've used all your pistol abilities and your grenade 2. Maybe you'll do freeze grenade and then throw out some more grenades. Once you've baited out a couple of their cooldowns, you want to go in for maybe like a slick shoes into the supply crate combo that I talked about. And then when they're standing still, you can do a melee range grenade barrage with poison grenade, if that's what you want to finish them off right there. And yeah, that's a pretty big combo there, is slick shoes into supply crate. Because a lot of times when people see supply crate, they'll try to dodge out. So getting them with the slick shoes beforehand, which is a lot less counterplayable, is pretty nice. And then yeah, you just want to be spamming grenade 2 off cooldown. That's pretty much it, right? You can make a lot of plays with like stealth into going up in melee range and just doing a massive grenade 5 into their face. And yeah, you just want to cover Kandis a lot. So you want to do your 2 into your 2 and then cover it with the 3, and that's like 5 Kandis there. And then you can do chill grenade as well into the 2, and that's 4 Kandis with the cripple as well for shrapnel. And yeah, if you're ever being focused, this build has a lot of get out of jail free cards, right? Because you have Elixir S, you have your shield block, and you can also slick shoes if you're getting chased by like a +1 by like a thief. And then you can often counter pressure the thief and often make them almost die sometimes and waste their time for +1ing you. So yeah, this is a very good build for side noting because of that, because it can survive in outnumbered situations. However, as I mentioned, the mobility on the build is very low. So you need to, when you recognize that you are in those situations, actually go and kite, right? You can't just stand still and be like, oh, I'm just gonna rocket boots out. You don't have that. So you have to mind your positioning very well on this build. But players who are very good at positioning will see a lot of results on this build, because you can manipulate your positioning so easily while using grenades at the same time. So yeah, that's pretty much it. In this match, I'll be going to the far node, even though this build has pretty decent team support in team fights with the massive Condi cleanse from the F5 and the AoE damage. But as you can see here, I get +1 by a Revenant as I'm pushing far, and I want to pressure that Revenant because if I can prevent them from going into mid, that's doing a lot of work for my team. But they disengage, and I go into the 1v1 with their holo. I land some nice damage off on them because I have range damage, and I get a nice unblockable poison grenade into their block there. So as you can see, I'm getting a lot of damage off from that, and I've already procced their passive Elixir E, and I'm at the moment winning the node, so I'm about to get the decap, and yeah, this is a good situation for me. However, I need to be very aggressive to get the kill there, but I get +1 by the Revenant again, and that's really unfortunate because that allows the holo to basically re-sustain. So I've lost all the progress in my 1v1 because I'm getting pressured and the NG isn't, so he's getting full health again and he's getting all his cooldowns back, so it's like I lost a lot of progress here. So that's pretty unfortunate, but that does mean that my team should be winning the rest of the map. Unfortunately, that is not happening though. So now I'm in this 1v1, and I'm actually kind of pressured because I got +1 twice. And yeah, like even though the sustain is pretty decent on this build, it's more of like a Condi countering build. I do have a lot of protection, but I don't get a lot of sustain if I'm not converting conditions into boons, so I have to be careful. I do get a nice little slick shoes there, but I don't really get much off of it, so I'm not really coming back in this 1v1 because of the, I lost so much of the advantage there from the Revenant. So I'm gonna lose this now, and I go back into mid. So yeah, the holo's at full health and I'm at like 2k health, so I kind of make a huge mistake here and go back in. So he's very proud that he got the kill on me. I would be too if I killed a core NG. That's really strong class right now. But yeah, so I should have just disengaged there, and that was kind of a mistake on my part. Even though I was winning the 1v1, I kind of overcommitted or got a little bit too cocky there because I was winning it until I got +1. So I'm gonna respawn. My team is not winning anything on the map at the moment, so that's kind of unfortunate, but we'll see what we can do. I can go back to far and hope that I don't get +1 and see if I can win the 1v1 again, but the Revenant is there waiting for me. So you notice a little bit of a pattern here, right? He really likes to +1 me, so instead of going to far, I instead pressure the Rev, and I throw down my crate to, put down as much pressure as possible because I need to get momentum on the map. But obviously he can't fight me 1v1 because I'm just, I'm like a Condi class with protection. So he goes to mid, he's pressured, and that means my team can actually have an advantage in that fight, and I can go to far and get the decap. Also, I'm gonna probably full cap it, so we end up not winning mid, but that's because I was probably not there. But we do get sides now, and that's fine, because at this point my thief is +1ing me, not being too aggressive, and necros are pretty tanky right now, so yeah, there's not really much presence that they got here, and they're a normal thief, so they're probably gonna leave me 1v2, which is fine. I get a nice bounce from my pistol 3, and I end up being 1v3 here because they're holo, thief, and necro here. They all leave though, and the necro is left, and that's pretty good because I can 1v1 necros very easily, unless it's like a core necro because they have a lot of Condi cleanse and transfers. But this is a Reaper, and it doesn't really have that much Condi cleanse because it's using like a well build, so I can easily get the kill here. But I get +1 again by the Revenant, and that's unfortunate, but my team does show up finally, and that allows us to get the down here. I throw some grenades on the down body, but my team isn't really cleaving because of the stealth, even though I have really good cleave. They're double resing, so they're gonna get the res. I go for the decap here because if we're gonna fight off the node, they're getting value off it because they're getting the nodes while we're doing the fight. So I want to decap the nodes so they don't get value off of us fighting in roads like this. And once we do get the kills, then I can go full cap it, because you know it's not really that much investment for me to decap since I was already there. But after getting those kills, my team is pretty low in health, so we kind of need to be careful here. I do see their thief, or that's the Necro is respawning, and they're running towards mid, but I also have to keep track of one more person who's respawning because I don't want to get decapped that far for free. Basically, I'm watching far, so I'm trying to maintain pressure at mid while also watching far. And then their thief, who is the last person, comes to far, and I defend the node. This is a full Condi thief, and I'm just saving my full Condi cleanse for their burst. I see that they use it. I use my F5, which gives me all the boons from the Condi's conversion, and that allows me to get the kill because pretty much this Condi thief build relies on, well, not mine, but the one that he's running. It just relies on you one-shotting the enemy, and if you don't and they have Condi cleanse, well then you pretty much have nothing. And as you can see here, the Revenant tries to +1 me again. I mean, Revenant is a pretty busted class. Like, you can just get around the map and not really get punished too much. It's pretty dangerous, but me surviving versus that most of the time was actually really good for my team because it wasted the Revenant's time and didn't allow them to snowball the map as hard as they could have. So yeah, I saw that the thief respawned and he took the gate towards mid instead of the gate towards his home node, so that means I can push out towards mid because I don't want to be just AFKing versus nothing. So I take the 1v1 versus their other holo at mid, and I have a pretty good advantage right now because they're at like half health and I'm pretty high. But I do have 2 holos on me now, so this is pretty dangerous, and the Condi thief is here, so I go into Elixir S and I kite off the node. My team is dying at home, so I'm not expecting help anytime soon, so I just have to kite and stay alive. We're probably going to lose far. Yeah, there it is. It's getting decapped right now. And I get a really nice decap from the shield 4 knockback, which means that I basically decapped in a pseudo 1v3-ish situation. So that's pretty nice. So my team has now captured the home node, which is good because I'm winning the 1v1 here. And we have a 2 cap. We have the lead now. And yeah, we're in a good situation. I just want to be careful because the Revenant is coming in now, and I get a nice knockback to prevent any pressure. And I'm actually still very pressured, and my stealth is coming off cooldown. I get it off right before the Rev ports to me, so I get out and survive, which is very key, because if I died there, my team would lose the whole map again. So now, we do have mid. They did get it down. I'm just going to help cleave that out and make sure nothing funny happens. And at this point in the game, I decide I don't really want to go far anymore because we have a thief. They can probably decap that. And I keep getting +1 that far anyway, so I don't really get too much value off it. So maybe I can just get kills for my team at mid. So yeah, their Condi thief is kind of irrelevant in that fight because I throw my Condi cleanse for my allies there. And we get the kill, and now it's just easy for us to kill this Necro because we're outnumbering, and that's a really hard counter to Reaper is just sitting on them and focusing them. So we're able to win that fight pretty easily. And then we rotate out towards home because they're trying to push. That is their win condition to get a decap here. But we do a really good job of kiting and pressuring them, and they back off. And I land a really nice pistol 3 there because it bounces off of the heal turret and it hits the engineer twice. So we force them into the S there, and we're just chasing this kill. Our team is doing a really good job of holding the node. I see that they put down Elixir R before they go in down state, so I have to stealth stomp that very quickly, or S stomp that. And at this point in the match, it's pretty much won. All I need to do is kind of AFK on home, and then we win. So I'm just watching home, not really pushing in. I don't really have to make any risks this match because we'll just win with mid. If we get snowballed at mid, then that's fine because I'll just push back into our home. If we get decapped at home though, that's, you know, a bigger issue because you know, that's our safest node. So I just get some kills here. I see that their holo is pushing towards our home, and he notices that I noticed that. So then he goes back into mid, but at this point there's really no win condition for them because I'll just AFK here. So yeah, we pretty much win at this point. So yeah, if you like this kind of video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe for more, and of course leave a comment down below what you think. Is this build, you know, useful, or is core engineer, despite being the, you know, worst, probably the worst core class in the game right now, is this build any good? So yeah,